It's an interesting thing. When you read last week's Parsha, so last week's Parsha, after the whole Mabul, so that's when you had, and the dispersion, that's when you have the development of all different nations, right? All the Shivim Umas, all the 70 nations. They're developed in the end of last week's Parsha. So you have, again, you have Mitzrayim, you have Canaan, Chiti, Amori, you have Ammon and Moav, all these different nations that we're familiar with when you learn Chumash. The question is what happened to them? Where'd they all go? The Jewish people survived, we're still here, but where's everyone else? I mean, there's people out there, but no one can say, I'm an Ammoni, I'm a Amaleki, I'm from Canaan, I'm from Mitzrayim. What happened?
Until Sancheriv.
Oh, so exactly. So what happened was, Sancheriv was the king of Ashur during the times of the first Beis HaMikdash, and Sancheriv was a person that he conquered most of the known world, the civilized world at the time. And his approach was the following thing. His approach was, his issue was that, this is a time where we're talking about before fighter jets and before planes and advanced military strategies and so on. So if you have a huge empire, here's the question, if you have a huge empire, how do you make sure that the far-flung corners of your empire don't start a revolt, and by the time you know about it, it's already too late? So you have to do, as an emperor, what you have to do is create a system in which people don't want to revolt, or people can't revolt. So how do you do that? So Sancheriv's approach was, any country that he conquered, he would uproot the native civilization, he would uproot the people, and put them in another country. He would keep people moving. And by doing so, the Metzias was, reality, what happened was over time, is that people lost their identity. They lost their culture, they lost their religion, they lost their identity, and they're lost to the world. There's no more Ammon and Moav, because when Sancherib came and took the people of Ammon and put them in the land of Amalek, then they stop becoming Ammonis. They lose their sense of identity. This happened to every single people on earth except for the Jewish people. We were also taken away from Eretz Yisrael. We were also sent into Gauls for 2,000 years, and we still are all traveling all over the place. Yet, we still are a people. We still have our identity. So what's our trick? So you could just say it's a miracle, God's great, and He loves us. It's true. But if you think about it, though, the way, even when God performs miracles, there's a system to it. It's not just like, okay, you know what, I'm going to break the rules. There's a system even to miracles. So what's the trick of our survival? So it's like this. In order to understand the key to our survival, you have to go to the very beginning of exile and see how the Rebbeinu Shalom, how the Master of the Universe established, how did He plant that seed that's called exile? And maybe at that original moment, we'll be able to see how Hashem is manipulating in such a way where Golus comes into the world, exile comes to the Jewish people, but with its remedy, sort of with the ticket for our survival. And so that point of when God sort of said this idea or planted that seed of exile is in our parsha. Avram Avinu is told by the Rebbeinu Shalom that your people, you're chosen, you're unbelievable, and your children are going to have the land of Israel. And Avram Avinu says, thank you, God, I appreciate it, but how do I really know? Is it really true? Am I really going to get it? Are you really going to keep your word? And Hashem says, yes, basically. But Chazal say like this. Chazal say the fact that Avram Avinu even asked such a question, Hashem Yisbarach says, because you asked that question, your children are going to have to go into Galus. Okay? So it's like this. When you read that Chazal, it sounds like, I don't know, like Avram Avinu lost it for a second. Like, where'd that come from? Like Avram Avinu, you're talking to God. The whole parsha, the whole time, Hashem Yisbarach tells Avram Avinu, go. I don't ask any questions, I go. And Hashem also gave him unbelievable promises then. He doesn't ask, how do I know? Only at this point, when Hashem Yisbarach says, you're going to get Eretz Yisrael, then Avram Avinu begins to question, how do I know? Is it really true? Am I really going to get it? So clearly, although Avram Avinu had free will, and we're not taking that away, but clearly this is part of God's plan. God clearly wanted to introduce the world to the concept of Galus. And He needed that introduction to come through Avram Avinu. And so Hashem therefore clouded Avram Avinu's judgment for the time being. This is how it's explained. He clouded Avram Avinu's judgment for the time being, and Avram Avinu therefore asked this strange question of how do I know? And Hashem said, oh, there's my window. Because you asked that, there's going to be exile. But really, that's really what God wanted this conversation to happen the whole time. Why? Why does God want exile to come to the world through Avram? The answer is, as we're going to see in a couple minutes, it's Avram Avinu that gives us the strength to survive exile. That's going to be the, and therefore, Avram Avinu therefore needs to be the one through whom Gullus comes to the world. Why? Because he's the antidote to the Gullus itself. If Gullus were to be introduced to the Jewish people, to the world, by anyone else, then it would be too harsh. It would be very, very difficult to withstand and to deal. But because it came to us through Avram Avinu carries with him the same person that gives us the hit, also gives us the Band-Aid to put on the wound that comes from the hit. You follow? So Avram Avinu is the one that through which the difficulty of exile comes, but it's specifically through him because he carries with him the trick to survive it and to handle it. So what is that trick? So in order to figure that trick out, let's think about Avram Avinu. Who was this person, Avram Avinu? What was his inyan? What was his contribution to the Jewish people? I mean, it's hard to he's the beginning, right? But if you compare him to everyone else, all the other tzaddikim that we've had, what's unique to him? So it's like this. There's a theme in Avram Avinu's life that might initially go unseen, but when you like begin to notice it, it pops up everywhere. That there's a theme in Avram Avinu's life which is about having a place, about setting up shop. This is where I am. Example: what mitzvah do you think of when you think of Avram Avinu? Think Avram Avinu equals hachnasas orchim, right? Taking in guests. What's hachnasas orchim? So nowadays hachnasas orchim means that you have a neighbor that you really like and everyone gets together for a Shabbos meal. That is hachnasas orchim, sort of, but the classic hachnasas orchim is what? Is you have a person traveling on the road, doesn't have a place to be, he's basically homeless. So you take him into your house, you give him a place. You give him a place to settle. Avram Avinu equals hachnasas orchim. Avram Avinu, another aspect, Avram Avinu, the Gemara says, was the first person to establish this idea of being kovea makam l'tfilasa. What does kovea makam l'tfilasa mean? It means to have a makam kavua, that wherever you daven in the same spot as you daven before. There's such an idea. The Gemara says in Brachas that whoever has a certain spot that they have for davening and they're consistent about it, Elokei Avram be'ezra, then the God of Avram Avinu will listen to your prayers. Avram Avinu has a place. He picks his place. Even the davening of Avram Avinu, when the pasuk describes the tefillah of Avram Avinu, it's described with the word amidah. Vayamod Avram, that Avram Avinu stood up and he prayed to God in the form of amidah. What does amidah mean? Amidah means to stand still. It's Pesukah de Zimra, people pace back and forth, right? Even Shema. Shemona Esrei is called amidah, right? Why? Because he's standing still. The davening of Avram Avinu is described as a davening of standing still. The pasuk describes more than that. The pasuk describes that we know in the parsha, Avram Avinu was told by God to go to Eretz Yisrael. Fine, he goes there. And what does he meet when he gets there? A famine, right? There's a famine. And he's forced down to Mitzrayim. And then the pasuk says, and he's down in Mitzrayim, what does he do? So it's a whole mice over there. And eventually he survives Mitzrayim and he comes back with a lot of wealth. And he goes back to Eretz Yisrael. So the pasuk says, Vayelech l'ma'asav, that he went on his journeys. What does it mean to went on his journeys? Rashi brings down from Chazal. It means that Avram Avinu purposefully took the same route as he went down to Egypt, the same route back up, the same hotels, the same room, the same everything. Why is he doing that? Avram Avinu seemingly, therefore, is connected with having a place, with setting up shop, having a place. This is where I live. And Avram Avinu, even his mitzvah, is what Zachnasas Orchim is, giving other people a place to live. How is Avram Avinu Makarav Yidden? Avram Avinu was Makarav, not Yidden, he was Makarav people. How Avram Avinu was Makarav people to God, how so? Through giving them, they were wanderers, he would give them a place to sit, give them a place to eat, and he would, through that, inspire them to connect to Hashem. So what was he doing with that? Like a good trick? It was just like a Kiruv trick, like they teach you in Kiruv school. Avram Avinu, let's understand, Avram Avinu was a very, very big person. Everything that he did, he wasn't just doing as an individual person. He was doing it as with the intention of establishing something for all mankind and for all of Klal Yisrael. He was not an individual person. Like if you think about this, Avram Avinu lived 175 years. I think it was 175 years, and all the conversations he ever had were just recorded in Chumash. I'm sure he said more things than what's recorded in Chumash, right? I'm sure he did more things in his life. Why not tell me about what he did to become Avram Avinu? So why does the Torah choose to talk about what it talks about and leave out everything else? The answer is, the only things that Chumash records about Avram Avinu are things that he did not as an individual person. Things that he did as an individual human being to become a tzaddik, That's not for Torah. It's his own personal thing. What's recorded in Chumash are things that Avram Avinu did as the father of the Jewish people. And so everything that's recorded in Chumash in terms of how he traveled, setting up shop, Hachnos Orchim, all the things that we've been talking about, the fact that he stands to daven Shemoneh Esrei the same spot as he davened the previous day. These were not just nice things that he was doing as an individual person to become a tzaddik. These are things that he's doing on purpose, because this is something that he's trying to inject in the Jewish DNA, this quality of having a spot. In a more global sense, this was Avram Avinu's mission on earth. What Avram Avinu's mission on earth was to give God a place to live. See, what was the situation of the world before Avram Avinu? They were tzaddikim. Noach, Mr. Yeah, they had big tzaddikim. But what was different about those tzaddikim versus Avram Avinu? The difference was that before Avram Avinu, there were holy Jews. They're holy Jews. I keep on saying that. They were holy people, right? But it wasn't solid. They didn't take root in the world yet. They didn't have a place. They didn't create a place for God to live. Like God was this sojourner. God was this wanderer, so to speak. And no one is giving him a place to sleep. No one's giving him a place to live. So you had one generation. Noach is the tzaddik. What about Noach's kids? Listen, who knows? They're just regular people, so to speak. Another generation, Mesushalach is a tzaddik. Does it pass down Birusha? Does he give that leadership over to his children? Is it solid? Is it firm? No. It's an amazing thing. Avram Avinu is described as a king. Avram Avinu is a melech. Chazal say such a thing that Avram Avinu even had a coin. He had a coin that he minted. You know what I mean? Like Avram Avinu had a malchus. Why is Avram Avinu called a king? The reason why Avram Avinu is called a king, because what a king is establishing power that's set, that's kavua. It's kavua. It passes down to your children and to your grandchildren. It's not going anywhere. Avram Avinu created a place on earth in which God is able to reside in a solid way, and that's why he merited what? He merited for his genetics to be a place of godliness in a set, solid way. So what does this mean for us? Okay, so this is like all a nice thing. And by the way, what's amazing is, with all this being said, like the theme of Avram Avinu's life seems to be, as we've been discussing the past few minutes, the theme of Avram Avinu's life is what? Is set. To have a place, this is where you are, this is where you are, this is where you are. And that's what he's trying to do with God. He's trying to create planet Earth to be a place where God can live, like he could put his feet up and like this is where he is, so to speak. What's amazing is, but what's the first thing God says to Avram Avinu? Lech Lecha, move, start walking. It's funny. Everything in Avram Avinu's life is about being settled. And the first thing Avram Avinu is told by God is, keep on moving, don't settle down. How do you make sense of all of this? So here's the idea. Rav Tzadok HaKohen explains like this. This is the Nakuda. The Nakuda is like this. The nature of a human being is to be a creature that's always on the move. We're always on the move, by its very nature. We're always going from point A to point B. Most of our lives, we're trying to get somewhere. Even when we're there, when you get to work, right, or whatever it is, you're not really there yet. You physically got to where you're supposed to be, but now you start working to really get somewhere financially, or somewhere, with covet, power, whatever it is. We're always trying to get somewhere. Even when you're physically sitting in your seat right now, you're not so still. Yeah, you're fidgeting, you're moving. I mean, that's how human beings are. Our minds are always racing. Emotionally, we're always going up and down and sideways and back and forth. A human being is called a Heilig. What's Avram Avinu trying to bring to the world? What's Avram Avinu's message? What Avram Avinu's message to the world is as follows, is that what? You're a Heilig. Humanity is moving. You're going to walk, you're going to go up, you're going to go down, you're going to go sideways, you're going to go left, and you're going to go right, and you're never going to feel that you're at your destination. And says Avram Avinu, I'm not taking that away, because that's what makes you a person. But says Avram Avinu, but my contribution to you is as follows, that in all your wanderings and all your journeys, you should at least know that you have somewhere to live. You have somewhere to go back to. Define yourself. See, when a person's, let's say, an example, you have a guy who's like traveling for business or vacation or whatnot, right? So you ask the guy, like, where do you live? Well, the answer is, where do I live? I live on the train right now. You know what I mean? Because that's where I am right now. But no one's going to say that. They're going to say, Baruch Hashem, I'm not homeless. I have a home. Where do I live? In Brooklyn, Queens, whatever. The answer is when a person has a home base, then even if they eventually find themselves distant from that home base, but they're always returning mentally and spiritually and emotionally to that place, and eventually physically to that place. And when a person is anchored in a particular spot, then even if they're forced out of that spot during times, but since there's a part of them that's thinking about it, there's a part of them that's still connected to where they come from, that holds them there. It's like when you have an animal on a leash. So if you just let go of the leash and it goes, it'll get lost. What do? You tie the end of the leash to a tree or to a pole or something, and now the animal can walk, but it's within a range. And the animal, and even if you train an animal well, even if you let go of the leash and it goes, but it knows where to go home. And so even when it's getting lost, it's not really lost. It could get pretty out there, but eventually it finds its way back. What Avram Avinu is establishing in the Jewish heart, his contribution to the Jewish people is as follows: that no matter where a Jew goes in life, wherever our minds and thoughts take us, there's a part of us that has a home. There's a part of us that has a place. And there's a part of us that's still connected to that place. Avram Avinu, Magin Avraham means that there's a part of the Jewish heart that's bound to God, that's bound to Yiddishkeit, and that part does not move. The rest of us is moving. The rest of us is running around like crazy. But there's a part of us that's connected to that. And it's Avram Avinu, therefore, that although he's told to move, to be Lech Lecha, but his avoda, what's his avoda? His avoda is to move and to wander, but establish a place of dwelling at the same time. Ensure, just as your children will, that they're going to go through upheaval too. They're going to go through gullahs. They're going to go through they're going to go through exiles, and they're going to find themselves in one country, then another country, then another country. And the question was, we started with, how do we not become lost to history from that? The answer is because although we're physically moving around all the time, but there's a part of us that's still connected to the land of Israel. There's a part of us that's tied. The end of the leash is still tied to the land of Israel. 3 times a day we daven. Where do we face? Eretz Yisrael. How many times do we talk about Eretz Yisrael? Any occasion we have, we say Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim. What is this fixation about the land? So it's just a nice thing. Eretz Yisrael is a beautiful thing. We want Mashiach to come. It's deeper than that. It's because we daven 3 times a day facing Eretz Yisrael that keeps a part of us still home. And as long as a part of us is still home, it means we won't be completely lost. The Ammon, Moab, Yishmael, Amalek, all the nations, all the 70 nations, when they were taken out of their homeland, they were completely taken out of their homeland. There's no piece of them that was left behind. And if they were completely taken out, then guess what? They become lost. But the Jewish people, we were taken out of Eretz Yisrael, but we were not completely taken out. There's a part of us that's still there. Who is the one that gives us the strength of being in one place, but part of us still being home? That's Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu's whole thing is Achnasas Archon. Avram Avinu's whole inyan is that while you're journeying, while you're traveling, there's a part of you that is still at home. That's Avram Avinu. And this is why the first thing Avram Avinu was told is Lech Lecha, means to travel, to go. But at the same time, Hashem Yisparach promises him, while you're traveling, I'm going to give you blessings as if you're not traveling. Right? Because the Pasuk says that I'm going to make you famous, you're going to have children, you're going to have wealth. And Rashi comments, all these blessings are things that don't come when you're traveling. They come when you're settled. When you're settled, then you can start developing a popularity and a business, and you could build a family. But when you're traveling, those things don't come. But what's an amazing thing? Avram Avinu was told, travel, and you'll get those things anyway. So what? Just God's breaking the rules? He's not breaking the rules. He's establishing who Avram Avinu is. What he's establishing is that Avram Avinu is a type of Jew. What his contribution to the soul is that you're traveling, but there's a part of you that's not. And the way God expresses that is that Avram Avinu, you're going to be traveling, but because there's a part of you that's home, you're going to get famous, you're going to have money, you're going to have children, because there's a part of you that's not traveling. There's a part of you that's settled. What is the avoda that we have to take from this? So what can we do? Chazal say, there's an obligation on a Jew to ask themselves a question: what could I do to reach the level of my ancestors? So what could we do on our level to become Avram Avinu Dik? The answer is, our avoda practically from all this is the following thing. Find something in Yiddishkeit, each and every one of us. We have to find something in Judaism, in Yiddishkeit, that we could always go back to. You know what I'm saying? That we can say, I'm traveling through life and I do a lot of things here and there, good and bad, all sorts of stuff, but this is where I live. I live tzitzis. I live tefillin. I live mincha. I live tzedakah. I live hachnasas archim. I live kibbud avim. I live bikur cholim. I live, Micah, I don't know, putting up a fence on your roof. Whatever. Find a mitzvah. I live not putting on Shabbos. There's such an idea that the Torah is big enough that every single Jew is connected to one particular part of Torah. And from that point of Torah, that's your anchor. That's your Eretz Yisrael. That's your Avraham Avinu. And when you have that anchor, then everything else in life, eventually you go back to it. And that's what we have to, it's a huge inyan in Avodas Hashem to find your mitzvah. And it's, the way I like to think of it is like when you go to a shmorg, right? When you go to a shmorg, they don't give you a big plate, right? They give you a small little plate. And you take the little plate, and you try this thing, and you're like, that was nasty. Leave the plate, and you take another one, and you try the next one. Until eventually you find what you like. So very often people think that all you have is like one option, right? It's like, think of Yiddishkeit as all I have is this one plate, and if I don't like the first experience, then that's it, finished, I guess it's not for me. No, it's a shmorg, it's not the meal yet. It's not the meal. By the meal, you have no choice, right? Because it's just what they give you. By the shmorg, it's up to you. You like this? It's good. Then stick with it. Then you try other things, but you go back to it eventually, right? But when you but if that's not your thing, then move on to something else. Yiddishkeit is big enough that each and every one of us can find something to attach ourselves to. And when you find that anchor point, it doesn't mean to neglect everything else. Quite the opposite. It means that you're tethered. You have a home, and now that you have a home base, travel at will, and you won't feel lost because you always know where to go back to. That's Avraham Avinu. If we makash ourselves to that, if we could find that nekuda that speaks to us in Yiddishkeit, that our mitzvah, and it's something that other people might think like, I don't get it, but everyone has a different taste. You know what I mean? So that's the way it is. When you find your thing, then you hold on to that, and you connect, and you'll see that you'll be able to connect deeply to everything else in Yiddishkeit because you have a home. So Hashem Shal, we should be zeichet to find it, each and every one of us, and connect ourselves to the home of all of Klal Yisrael, which is Eretz Yisrael. We should be zeichet to return to that place. B'bias kol tzadik meher v'meinu. Amen. Thank you, Hashem.